Welcome into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and Tenitra. Coming up on today's show, people, I think it's finally going to happen on April 27th.
Jekyll and Hyde, get right or can't get right. We don't know which team is going to show up, but we'll talk to you about it.
And last but not least, Cam Newton out here looking for work. We'll talk about all that right here on ATL Day Ones. Let's go.
This is ATL Day Ones, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
I want to start by saying thank you for making ATL Day Ones your first listen of the day. And remember, we are free and available wherever you download your podcast and wherever you download your podcast. Make sure that you leave us a 5-star review. Really appreciate that from you in advance. Today's episode of ATL Day Ones is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. But T, when you think about all of the moves the Falcons have made as of late, and we know they made a lot, and it's a laundry. And I saw a post on from D-Led about all the moves the Falcons have made. They have been super uber busy, yes. And I think these moves right here, specifically Mike Hughes, cornerback who was drafted out of Minnesota in 2018 as a first-round draft pick. So he will be joining the Falcons on a 2-year contract, and also they brought back Cornell Armstrong. Now, with that being said, T, the Falcons have added on every level of the defense. Defensive tackle, off-ball linebacker, corner, safety. But there's one particular position that they haven't added to yet. T, is April 27th, 2023 finally going to happen and draft that position. And you know what position I'm talking about.
Yes, we certainly hope so. We certainly hope so. I mean, everything else, like you said, has been shored up. Your secondary is quite fine. You've got some good depth there. Slowly but surely, you're getting your interior all squared away. Even got a couple linebackers that you threw in there just for kicks and giggles. So, if you got the trenches set and you have the secondary set, there's only one place for you to go. Get yourself some help on the edge.
Yes. Because at the end of the day, that's the one thing that we feel like it has been missing from this team.
Yes.
Shoot, ever since 2017, the last time they made the playoffs, right? So those are some of the people that you still had on the team that you know, not necessarily count on every third and long, but you had some guys that you know that will be close to the quarterback once that time came. And I think that when you go for so long without having primary guys to count on, it just, you kind of get used to it, right? And you start spewing out all of this ridiculousness, talking about best player available when, you know, you haven't been able to win up front on either side of the football for the past few years. And I'll give them a pass for last year because, you know, being able to establish yourselves running the football as one of the better running football teams in the entirety of the NFL, third best to be specific on that. I think that you're starting to establish yourself, and I think that once you start to establish yourself up front offensively, you need to start now to starting to establish yourself on the defensive side of the football, and that starts with guys who can get home on third down, T.
It does. It really, really does. And this goes to the very philosophy that Terry Fontenot kind of previewed for us for the first time, at least from what we've heard this year, which is that you do have to build the entire defense in order to get the guys that get home, because at every level you need to be sure that you're shored up. So I feel like they've definitely done that. And again, we're looking at a board 1 through 7 that in all likelihood will be quarterback stacked. So that'll allow them, to me, this may be arguably, and hey, this takes nothing away from Chris Lindstrom, by the way, because that was a fantastic get. Absolutely. And even AJ Terrell, a great get in the middle of the first round as well. But to be at 8, and no offense to Kyle Pitts or even Drake London, but I'm still going to say to be at 8 and not have to move up far, if you have to move up at all. And Jarvis, we don't talk about this very often, but there's a good chance they could even move back and get another asset or two, depending on just how things go, really with 1, 2, 3, right? Really with the Bears, the Texans, and the Panthers. That's really what's going to dictate the rest of the first round, especially the early first round. I feel like they are in excellent condition to get exactly who they want and need. And Jarvis, not just a player as far as like best player available, although in this case it's probably going to be a little bit of both, but to get a player who can literally hit the ground running, because you already have players who can hit the ground running and will. So to get a guy who can have an immediate impact, I think that's going to be crucial as well.
Yeah, because like I said, this draft right here has a potential for something to happen that has never happened before. You're talking about 4 quarterbacks going in the top 5 potentially. That scenario could play out, and then when you have those quarterbacks being scrunched up at the top of the draft like that, that's going to do nothing but push those position players down. Will Anderson going to get drafted later. Tyree Wilson going to be drafted later, and Jalen Carter going to be drafted later. So that's 3 guys right there that I just named that the Falcons should take a long, hard look at. And I thought it was pretty interesting about the report coming out of Athletic from my guy Josh, saying that, hey, the Falcons are probably going to do a hard pass on Carter. I don't necessarily agree with that, but like you said, with the way things are going to go down, which I feel like everybody pretty much feels like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
With all those guys getting pushed down, the Falcons are going to have their pick of a guy who can put his hand in the dirt or get in the 2-point stance and rush the passer. Now, T, one thing that we've been talking about for a very long time, it seems like, ever since Dansby Swanson walked out of that door and out of Cobb County, not Atlanta, Cobb County, is who's going to fill that spot? Who's going to be the guy to fill in that spot? And we've been told Orlando Arcia and Vaughn Grissom were those guys. And to the point where Vaughn Grissom had gone down to New Orleans to get some work with Uncle Ron Washington, who's the infield expert. But we found out yesterday that Vaughn Grissom and Braden Shewmake have been optioned to AAA.
Yeah.
So what do you think the Braves line of thinking is on this one, as far as, okay, we're gonna get one of the guys that was up for the position, and we got another young guy that plays that same position. We're gonna offer him down to the same team, and put Orlando Arcia as a starter. What's going on here?
Yeah, I feel like with the Orlando Arcia placement there, obviously he'll be the starter for the season, but I think he's literally just the safe bet. Apparently there's one little piece, and I'm going to have to call it on his fielding, right? Vaughn Grissom's fielding. I think there's just a piece that's missing. And because that piece is missing, I think that ultimately the Braves want to be on the safe side, right? Now, here was an interesting back and forth as well, which I don't know. It depends on whose report you want to believe, right? Because you had Justin Toscano coming out with information, Mark Bowman coming out with information, and Peter Gammons. Now, Mark Bowman of MLB.com says that, hey, Vaughn Grissom is fine. There's no injury there. He played 9 innings yesterday. He practiced yesterday.
Went 3 for 4.
It's just that he's not ready. Right. And he's been hitting around 371. So he's just not ready 100% probably on the field perspective. Braden Shewmake has been having a nice spring training as well. Just not ready. Now, Justin Toscano of the AJC stated the same thing. And even went so far as to say, from a union perspective, you really can't you can't send that injured player down to AAA, right? Because that's going to pose an issue. Peter Gammons, however, says that last week, his sources told him that there might be an issue there with Grissom with a hernia. And I believe Peter Gammons is also with The Athletic as well as MLB Network. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how this plays out. But because of that union piece, I almost slant towards Mark Bowman and Justin Toscano and think, no, the Braves just didn't see something that they wanted to see to make them pull the trigger for Vaughn Grissom as the starter. But that does not mean that we won't see him, even if it's platoon style, early in the season. And we know if we get to that trade deadline and all we have is Arcia as a stopgap, and we still haven't seen the progress we need to see out of Grissom and Shewmake, Alex Anthopoulos is going to make a move. And we can't name the last time other than letting Dansby Swanson and Freddie Freeman go. But as far as an acquisition, especially a midseason acquisition, we can't name the last time that didn't work out in the Braves' favor.
Yeah, and I think I have no issue or no qualms about him waiting to the trade deadline to make a move if need be. But because I think that ultimately you have some good options, and I think more so I skew towards this maybe being a depth thing. You know what I mean? Because like you said, you play it safe. Orlando Arcia at the start off, and because me, I want the young guys to play. I want to see what they're working with. Like you said, Vaughn Grissom has got off to the start from at the plate, a really good start. Braden of 370, like you mentioned, and then Shewmake. His defense wasn't never in question. It was his bat that they talked about that he needs to work on. So I think I think we're starting to see some things as we talk this thing out. I think we're starting to see one guy's might not necessarily be up to speed where he needs to be on the opposite ends of both of those spectrums. One bat, one's defensive prowess. So I think this is something that the Braves can afford to be patient with when it comes to like who they're going to have at that shortstop spot. And I think it'll all play itself out as the season gets rolling.
And worst case scenario, they even have Ahiri Adrianza to be the backup. I'm going to call him the backup to the backup because RC is essentially a backup. So he's the backup or the stopgap there. Or if Brian Sticker wants to give Orlando Arcia a rest day, you still have Adrianza, and he's still solid enough to get you what you need on offense and defense.
Yeah, that's like the things that we talk about when as far as the Braves quote unquote issues.
Yes.
Like teams wish they would have. They pray for these type of issues to have when you're talking about the embarrassment of riches is real this year for the Atlanta Braves. So I'm not too concerned about it. I just thought it was a little interesting that they would send those two down there that play the same exact position. So y'all tell me how that works out. But we shall see as the Braves get going. March the 30th. As they're getting ready to crank this thing up, we are almost here. It is crazy how this season is rolling around so quickly. Now, we talking about a season rolling around. How about this? March Madness is all the way off into the races. So we have upsets and everything. So what I need you to do, I need you to go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That is the #1 sports book in America. Yes, that's FanDuel. And if you are a new customer, they got the no sweat first bet up to $1,000. And that's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So if you betted on, Virginia, to go and you lost your money, like they might be able to give you a little something back on that. So, to go towards something else. And then you can bet on everything from the money line, the point scores, the threes, drain. They got everything right there waiting just for you. So, that can include, the spread, the money line, the total, player props, and more exclusive bets. They even let you combine their bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The perfect time to take advantage of the fact that there are 4 #1 seeds knocked out of the NCAA tournaments combined this early in history. This is the first time it's ever happened. So you might want, if you're a betting person and a gambler, this might be your time. So,
yes, indeed.
But if you'd asked me a couple games ago, if I was betting on there being a different sort of issue at the 4 spot, if you know what I mean, I would have said, no, we're actually in a situation of embarrassment of riches with the Hawks as well. Sadiq Bey coming up and Jalen Johnson just balling out. It just had a really, really nice stretch, really since Quinn Snyder took over, right?
Yeah.
And we got word yesterday that he had an MRI done. And unfortunately, after missing 2 straight games, he's a mild left hamstring strain, a mild left groin strain, and he's going to be out at least a week. That just sounds painful. So you look at what he brought to the table. And if you look at that small sample size of about 5 games, he was averaging 5 points per game, but that's not the important part. The important part is 42% from the field. He was taking quality shots. And the other piece there is the rebound number just kept going up. And then the third piece, Jarvis, is you can't always tell it in the stat line, but he was giving the Hawks some necessary defense on the perimeter, which really made me think to myself, oh dear, what does this mean for the Hawks as they fight for their playoff lives and fight to stay in that 8th spot in the East?
I think you're going to take a little bit of a hit, right? Because when you think about, Mr. Microphone, Jalen is doing what Mr. Microphone, for those you don't know, that's John Collins. He's the guy that was supposed to be the guy that go get you those rebounds, scrap, play defense, be able to defend on the perimeter on a consistent basis. And I think that, and we even seen, John Collins not be in games towards the end of the fourth quarter because of those things that I just mentioned. So I think that when you have a guy like Jalen go down like this, like I said, for a week or so, we only looking at 11 games left in the season. So this is crucial. And I was reading some things this morning as far as that 8th playoff spot. Things are tight. Toronto is a half a game, and even the Chicago Bulls are with arm's reach of the Atlanta Hawks if they start to slip. So I think this is something of the things that, and reason why that 8th spot is so important is like you have to lose 2 games to not make the playoffs. So and you have home games in those particular situations as well. So those are some of the things that, it's not necessarily the 6th spot, but it is some advantage to stay in that 8th spot for the Hawks going forward. But I think that with Jalen Johnson going down, you're going to look to a guy like Saddiq Bey to step his game up some more. I've been liking what I've been seeing from a perimeter standpoint. I think he's been coming around on that. He has his lapses from time to time, but I'm okay with that. But I think John Collins is the guy that's going to have to step up even more consistently throughout 4 quarters in order to be in the games at the end and be a factor, into why they win games coming down the stretch.
And AJ Griffin, I think, is going to benefit as well because, he's had a little bit of a slump, sort of the rookie slump and the slump from coming from All-Star Weekend, right? But he really had a nice game against the Spurs. He looked like he was getting his touch back. So hopefully when you are able to, kind of play playground basketball against the Pistons, as we hope they do, I think that'll bode well for AJ Griffin also. And hopefully he can regain his touch, regain his confidence in these last 11 games as hopefully the Hawks approach the playoffs and he'll be able to experience his first playoffs. So I think that's also a positive. Not that they played the same spot, but, AJ is one of those guys who could kind of sort of play across the 2, 3, 4. So I think that's going to bode well for him too. Now, you spoke of 48 minutes. We can't seem to get 48 minutes to save our lives for the Hawks. You think about this crazy stat. 25 games, the last 25 games, they have been at 500, below 500, or above 500 by exactly 1 game. 25 straight games. You don't know if they're going to be even, up 1, or down 1. That's crazy. That's a crazy stat. And it speaks to it's a macrocosm of the microcosm we saw in the Spurs game of the Jekyll and Hyde that this team is.
Yes.
It is. So you think about this. And the good news is this. They've played the Pistons 3 times this season, beat them by 5 points in the first game, beat them by 24 points in the second game, beat them by 25 in the last game. And when you look at their injury report, forget Cade Cunningham, it's like their injury report is like the walking wounded. So there's no reason that the Hawks should lose this. Right? I mean, this should be a get back right game. Or do you think, my goodness, that it's going to be a can't get right game?
I mean, as far as, especially coming off Sunday, like I've stripped myself of all the expectations from Atlanta Hawks. Like whoever, like they can be playing the doggone the process 76ers when we knew
the
for
Rockets.
a fact they were trying to lose.
Yeah.